Before I start this video, I do want to apologize for how long it is. I'm recording the process of me getting this printer all up and running again. I had to fix it, I had to modify it a little bit, and I eventually got a print. As you can see right here, it just took a long time and I wanted to document the whole process. So obviously I printed off another Cappie model because I wanted to put this printer through the ringer, and I eventually managed to get a Cappie model out of it. It's a decent little figure too on top of that. It's obviously smaller than my current Cappy, which is the one from my A1. But again, the fact I managed to get this out of the $20 printer is quite amazing. Especially considering, again, it's like 20 something odd years old. I had to fix it up. I had to modify the printer. And then on top of that, I had to fight the printer a few times because it kept stopping mid-print a few times. But again, I eventually got the model out, and it it came out far more better than I thought it did. So like I said, I do want to apologize for the length of the video, but I want to document the whole process of actually getting the printer working and actually getting a full out print. So with that said, if you want to go finish watch the video, go right for it. But if you just want to see the final print, well, this is the final print and it came out perfectly fine. Well, I think it's about time I put this thing to use. So I'm going to print out another Cappy. So one thing I want to mention right out of the gate is, like I said in the previous video, this is a 10-year-old printer. So you'll think it would, or you'll understand that it takes a while to print. Now I'm going to start off with the base, or the skirt and whatnot. That's going to take about 10 hours to do. Now here's the funny bit. This exact same print, but scaled from my A1, took about 12 to 13 hours. So that's a little funny that a modern printer with all the bells and whistles and how fast this thing is takes longer than my 10-year-old potato printer that I do not expect to be able to have proper adhesion. I will be impressed if I can get this thing to actually fully print in 10 hours. And I'll even be more impressed if I manage to get this MiSide model actually fully done on this small little printer. Theoretically, it should be possible. I did get a benchy out of this thing, so if I got a benchy out of it, theoretically, I should get a Cappy out of it also. Also a significantly smaller Cappy. And if I do, then that means I'm gonna have a nice small little Cappy to place somewhere on my computer desk and whatnot, compared to the big Cappy where I currently have her right now. I have my current big Cappy on top of my Epson printer that I'm planning on using for another life-size figurine at some point. Though I already have a life-size figure, life-size Chibi Mita. Yes, this is how tall she's actually supposed to be. This is going by the dev's own words. She's about 2'8". And normally I keep her behind my monitor because she's small enough to where I can do that. The reason why I have her over here is because I was actually cleaning my monitor. This is generally where Chibi Mina sits or stands in this instance because, again, she's 2'8". She can actually stay there without any issues. The only reason I move her is, again, clean the monitor of Windex and whatnot. And whenever I do my figurines, or my life-size figures, I tend to push my monitor back as far as possible so I can have a big enough area to work with. So whenever I do end up building my next figure, I'll just move her off somewhere else, where I might actually store her in my closet, because it'll take a couple months to actually do my next figure, and well, having to constantly put her back, move her every single day is going to be annoying, so I'd rather just store her in my closet. But yeah. Now I know I need to do upgrades to this thing, mostly fan related. I'm not going to do that yet until I get at least a Cappy model out of it. If I manage to get the Cappy printed, then I'll deem this printer worthy of upgrades and whatnot. So that'll mean knock to a fan for here, knock to a fan for the back, and then I need to look into how I need to properly lubricate this thing, because it needs it badly, both on this side here and this side here. Now, I guess I did use some of the bamboo lubrication I have laying around, but apparently that really wasn't enough. It's possible I need also somehow like WD-40 or something, the actual stepper motors. Now, I'm not going to do that yet because I don't know if I can actually WD-40 the stepper motors. I don't see why I can't, but I never had a printer like this to where I got a full-on manual maintenance on this thing compared to the one that just says, hey, lube the x-axis or whatever rail it says and whatnot. This thing was probably sitting for years, and I mean the noise alone lets you know it's been sitting. It's actually kind of amazing I managed to get the benchy in the state I did. Oh, and another thing I'll probably want to mention about the upgrades is I mentioned I don't need to update or upgrade the power supply. I'm fairly certain I don't, but I'm thinking of doing it anyways just because this thing takes so long to heat up. But then again, this is a 10-year-old printer, so it's possible it's just because it's this old 10-year-old tech and whatnot, and it's just not as snappy. But I'm thinking of upgrading the power supply anyways because it is just a 12-volt source, and I got a load of desktop power supplies just sitting doing nothing, and I can easily wire one of those up to be a power supply for this printer. So I'm still technically waking up and whatnot, so I'm going to do the print a little later on. So I'm going to do other things. This isn't a priority for me right now. I do want to get it printed, but like I said, for right now I just want to do other things. I keep forgetting I have two iPhones and I'm using my more nicer one for this video. So here's the first layer from the first attempt. As you can see, it got stuck. I think it more or less got stuck to the bed. So I realigned everything or re-leveled it, and it seems to be getting it relatively fine now. As you can see, there's a massive difference between the first layer and the current first layer that's currently going right now. And I'm currently only 2% in, and this is going to again take about 10 freaking hours. So I'm going to be surprised if this printer can actually achieve this. So far, it looks like it's able to do it. I mean, it did, of course, get the benchy done and whatnot. So theoretically, it should be able to fully print out this figure. It'll just take a couple days. But then again, it did take a couple days to do it on this one too, which is honestly pretty funny because, like I said, this thing's modern, and yet it took quite a few days to print out that Cappie figure. And if this one is going to play nice, it will also take a couple days to fully print out this Cappie. So with that said, I will come back when this is kind of in a more workable state again. Sorry, not workable state. I meant when it's a little more complete and you can more see what it actually is. Well, it seems like it's just gonna continue on printing like no tomorrow. So I'm so far very happy that I managed to resolve the issues this thing has, and it seems to just be printing. It's just taking forever because it's so old. Some time has passed and we've gone fairly far into the print, and it's printing relatively fine. It does have some layering issues and whatnot, and those layering issues is just due to the way they designed the actual cabling for the heat bed and whatnot. So when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to print off a little stress relief, and then I'm going to be completely redoing the whole wiring for the print bed, and that actually means full replacements. I'm just going to be sacrificing this cable for one of my power supplies that I'm never going to use because I don't overclock my CPUs. I don't overclock my GPUs. The only overclocking I ever do is the XMP for my RAM. So I can easily sacrifice this cable that I'm never going to use for a printer that I'm actually going to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back again when I'm more awake tomorrow, or later today. Well, my sleep schedule is messed up, so I need to go to bed. So I'll come back when this is done. We'll see what it looks like. Then I'll go through the next steps of modifying this printer and getting into a more functional state, and hopefully resolving these layering issues while also prolonging the actual cable's life and whatnot. Well, you know what I mean. So again, I will come back a little later today when I'm more awake and more able to properly speak. All right, so it's finally printed out. And other than the, again, horrible layer line, it kind of looks like the thing fully printed relatively fine. And considering how small this thing is and how old it is and generally how cheap it is, I'm very impressed how well it actually came out in general, even with the layer line. Again, rewiring the print bed should theoretically fix this issue. So with that said, I'm going to remove all the supports and we're going to see what it actually looks like. Well, the supports are a complete pain in the butt to remove. Granted, I'm pretty sure most people probably already know this is the case. But other than that, it did relatively come out relatively fine. So I'm gonna go to the, I guess, normal support type and not go to trees. I'm guessing this printer prints the previous versions of supports better than the trees. So with that said, I'm going to reprint this again, take another 10 hours. But before I do that, I am going to do the little upgrade I was talking about to the bed and whatnot, because if I'm going to do another 10-hour, 11-hour print, I want to make sure it's actually going to do it properly, or at least not have this severe layer line and whatnot. And on top of that, when I was actually trying to remove the supports, it actually broke on the layer line. So yeah, the bed definitely needs to be fixed. So I'm going to get everything set up and I will come back. Alright, so here's the build plate. So like I said before, I'm going to be desoldering and resoldering these again. And the main reason why is because with the current way this is set up, these wires go underneath the build plate like this. Since I'm going to be adding them externally, I want to flip them around so they're going out of the build plate like a normal modern printer and whatnot. And I also just want to replace the main power wires, and of course also replace the little sense wire again too, just because I think it needs to be just a little bit more longer. But with that said, I'll get all this done off camera and come back. The soldering iron I'm using is not really up to par for the ground plane that this heat bed is, but I managed to more or less solder them together. It is definitely not the best, and in all honesty, I would like to be able to fully redo this again, but I need to get a higher power, more powerful soldering iron. But for now, this should be more than enough. I just gotta monitor it from time to time, and of course, since I will be having a little cable sleeve, this area won't really be getting tugged that much once I get everything actually properly rebuilt. So the next step to do is to go into the kitchen, start rebuilding the printer again. Alright, got everything wired up. It's not the most prettiest job in the world, but this is a 10-year-old printer after all, so my want to make sure this thing is nice, clean, and pristine, like with my bamboo and whatnot, is not there, because again, this is such an old printer and you can modify the snot out of this thing. So that's why I see it as more of a just make it work type of printer, not make it pristine and precise and whatnot. So the next step for me to do is to re-level the bed and then print off the new side piece right here so I can have this properly anchored and whatnot. Apparently I can also run this thing passively, so I am going to remove this fan because that fan is noisy. Alright, got everything set up. I think I got the bed leveled. So before I do another reprint of the skirt that's going to take another, 10 hours, I'm going to reprint another benchy. Now I decided to take a look around at the model in whatever program I'm using, and this little area right here lines up with this right here. And I think this is due to the way this particular program or slicer actually melds or has a little, I forget what you actually call this bit, but that needs to be moved somewhere else. So yeah, it's very pronounced on this. So with that said, since I want to make sure everything's properly set up again, I'm going to do another 3D benchy. Also what I did is I did re-lubricate at least the this axis and this axis. I've got to lubricate this one because I don't know how to remove this metal shield yet. And when I do, I actually want to have this area open. That way so I can actually just do general maintenance on it. Yes, it does cover the area up and makes it look a lot more professional. But in the long term, I want more ease of access to like simple repairs or just simple cleaning and whatnot. And I'll eventually figure it out. But for right now, I just want to make sure I got the bed properly leveled and whatnot. So I will come back when this either fails or succeeds. Alright, this time around I'm doing an infill-less benchy, and so far it's printing out relatively fine. And of course, as you can see, those little strings right there, they correspond to the issue I was experiencing on this one right here. And I don't think there's really anything I can do about it with this thing just being so old. But it seems to be printing out the benchy just fine, so I'll let it do its thing for about another hour or so. Well, 2 hours, but still. For giggles, I'll bump it to 2 times speed. It's acting a little bit more like a normal 3D printer now, at least speed-wise to an extent. That's actually kind of cool. It's actually I mean, it's obviously not on par with my A1, but it's definitely sped up significantly. Somehow it just got stuck, jammed, or something right there. Why it did that, I don't know. Because last time it got stuck on the heat bed. But this time around, it got jammed on the print itself. And maybe I was going a little bit too fast. Whatever. So even though this is a failure, I'm still going to classify it as a success because I was able to actually get it to fully print up to this point right here, and it's still fully adhered to the bed. So I will do a little more bed leveling, and then I'll print off the side or the new side panel and whatnot. It's like the whole bed just moved. I spent God only knows how many minutes releveling it, and now apparently just somehow just moved up enough to where it just jammed everything. So it's not the printer not being able to print properly. The bed itself somehow sprung upwards and jammed it. This is a weird printer. All right, round number 2. This time I'm running at 1.5. I'm also doing a bigger benchy than normal because, well, I have yet to actually build a benchy on this thing that maxes out the build plate. And one thing you definitely note is it's not exactly on the center, so it really likes to show how old of a printer it is. So with that said, I'll just be monitoring this print and just coming it back every now and then, and if something goes wrong, I will obviously come back. Alright, some time has passed, and this is currently where we're at. It's doing its job just fine, and when it comes to the layer height, it's it's still got ways to go before it stopped, but generally speaking, it seems to be doing just fine. With that also said, I unintentionally made a Bodhi convertible. I like it. I'm keeping it. It is a failure, but I like the failure. Alright, the print is done. The printer knows it's done, and yet this screen apparently doesn't know it's done. The program here knows it's done, but it still thinks it's printing, and it took about 8 hours to do. So what I'll do is I'll just flip that off. I'll close this off. And what I will do, if this will close, is I'll wait for the bed to cool, pull the benchy, then probably tomorrow print off the side panel and whatnot. Alright, bed cooled off enough to where I can pop the benchy off, and as you can see, it definitely has some layer lining and whatnot. Again, this is an old printer, so I'm not expecting anything crazy. And with that said, printing it a little more bigger did in fact reduce the blemishing on this side. It's still there, but not as severe. Though I don't notice any blemishing on the bow or on the stern, which is kind of nice. Ooh, that's a lot of whatever you call that. But still, overall, I'm happy with how well this one came out. Again, it's not A1 quality, but it's still a good benchy nonetheless. Alright, it's the next day. I got the first half of the new side panel done. It took about 2 hours 13, and I had it running at 1.5. It seems 1.5 speed is that nice little sweet spot for my particular printer. So the next step for me to do is to print off the other half, get them glued together, and then put them onto the side and whatnot. And just like that, it is now done. It is not the most elegant solution in the world. I mean, I did try super gluing it, and it doesn't really look like you actually need to. But either way, it is now more or less done. I just gotta figure out how to put the stupid USB port in there. But other than that, it seems to work. Alright, so here's the print. It did fail again, and I think I know exactly why it failed. I think what happens is that when the computer goes to sleep, it stops transmitting or transferring whatever data is necessary to the printer, even though I have a card in there. It just stops transmitting, and well, when it stops doing that, everything just gets stopped. So the printer knows it needs to still be printing, but it's not able to print because, again, that turned off. So what I need to do is I need to go back into the power settings of this thing and basically just tell it to never turn off. Allow the screen to go to sleep and whatnot, but never like physically put the rest of it to sleep, if that makes any sense. So with that said, I'm going to go back into I think I did the cutting in, what was it? Give me a sec. I sliced or did the modifications I needed inside Bamboo Studio. I exported it as an STL, then I imported it into the other program, and it was able to be read completely fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the recut again, but as you'll note, I have a little connection piece right here, and I'm going to just basically have both sides be flat. That way, so I can have a little less marring when I go to reprint this again. So with that said, into the old recycle bin of plastic, and I'm going to go to sleep, and then I'm going to retry this print one more time, but when I'm more awake and have the proper settings for that, so that doesn't go to sleep. All right, it's the next day. I resliced everything. I made sure the printer's still leveled. I changed the sleep cycle for this computer so it doesn't go to sleep. And all I'm doing now is I'm just waiting for the printer to start printing. So if I actually go to here, you can see the heat bed is warming up, and eventually the extruder will hold up or warm up. It's like I said, this thing's old, it's slow, and I'm expecting these type of issues on something of this era because it's old. I want to see if I can strive to actually get this thing to print that Cappie model. And plus, I have spools of film that I can just burn through currently because I don't have a 3D printer of good quality to really use. So why not burn through what I currently got, because I don't see me getting a 3D printer for a couple months. Okay, I had a pretty interesting little failure. It actually printed outside the bed. So I need to go back into the slicer, move it a little more forward or a little more back and a little more to this way. Again, this thing's bed is kind of poo-poo garbage, and this thing is, no, it's not jammed, it's just making a bunch of noise. All right, this time around, it didn't fail. I actually stopped it. And this time I was running, I think I mentioned at 1.8. It's still pretty marred. I I just don't think I can ever really get this printer not mar. So at the very least, now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna see if I even get any form of a Cappie printed. So the main reason why I actually stopped is because I started playing CSEs again for a little bit. I was originally using my gaming laptop, but it was kind of struggling. So I nicked the computer I was using. So now I reset up my MSI laptop right here. This is a $5 one I got from my local freak. This is more than powerful enough. It has a 6th generation i7 4-core 8 thread and a GTX 980M. So this thing's fairly powerful. It's basically the desktop equivalent of when this laptop was made and produced. And for simple slicing work and whatnot, for a printer like this, heck, even an A1, this computer, even though it's old, is more than adequate enough. If I want to do anything major, I got my main computer, Sea of Thieves computer, and my secondary, which have far more modern components. Also, I'm going to bed because, as you can tell, I slurred my speech. So, I've been up for way too long. So, I'll get this thing fully set up when I'm more awake, and then I'll reprint this again, and hopefully this time I'll have a success, and then we'll finally get started on actually printing this thing out in full. Obviously this video is going to be really long, and nothing I can really do about that because I do want to take you through the process of what I'm going through when it comes to this printer, because unlike the A1, I'm going along with the ride on this one. Alright, got the new cooling fan printed out and installed. It came out relatively fine. Obviously, I will be eventually upgrading the cooling fan to a Noctua, but I gotta make do with what I got for the time being. So, with that said, now to reprint this out again, and hopefully maybe this time I have better success. Alright, so it's going by just fine. I actually had to restart it because apparently where it gets placed was off again, so I fixed that, resliced it, and now I'm reprinting again. And so far, it looks like the layers are coming by relatively fine, or being placed down, and I'm running at 1.8. Alright, some time has passed, and so far it's printing off relatively fine. I have no idea how long it has, but I'm running it now at 1.8. So in the long term, like I mentioned, I will be swapping out the fan for 40 mil, but I need to start somewhere, and why not test my new shroud with this? But other than that, or generally speaking, it seems to be working completely fine. And I do want to apologize for my inability of properly speaking because unfortunately that's how I am. With that said, this is a long video and I do want to apologize, but I want to just record the whole process of me trying to get this thing to fully do a proper print. Apparently today is run every household appliance and make so much noise day that I can't record a video properly. So I decided to go to my room now, and I finally got at least the first half to finally print. Obviously it's not going to be bamboo A1 quality, and I've yet to remove the supports. But considering how long I've been trying to get the printer to actually print this off, I'm actually happy that it's even in this state in the first place. Now, when it comes to removing the supports, I'm expecting this thing's going to be marred to sin and back. I'm just more happy that I even have it in this state in the first place. Maybe at some point I can fix the marring issue or the cooling issue or whatever's wrong with it. I doubt that cooling mod I did is going to work because, again, I'm using the original fan and there is some air, but it's not going to be like a Noctua. And at some point I do need to swap it for a Noctua, but again, it came out relatively fine. So I'm going to remove the supports and come back. All right, I removed the majority of the supports. And the marring, I mean, it is there and it's very bad right here. But in all honesty, you're really not going to be looking right here at the model. You're going to more or less be looking right here at the skirt. And again, it is noticeable, but compared to the marring I had on previous reprints I've done, this is the cleanest I've actually had this thing print out. This is honestly impressive. I don't know if it's due to me rescaling or me putting in that little part cooling mod that I did, but either way, this is the best print I've gotten out of that printer yet. So more than likely, the next step for me to do as I'm putting the rest of this Cappie model together is to eventually buy myself a 40mm Noctua fan, reprint that little cooling shroud again, but for the 40mm variant, and then reprint and then continue on printing and whatnot. All right, now printing out the other half of the skirt. I actually had a little bit of a issue. It's decided to stop printing or getting stuck on the first left layering and whatnot, which is pretty interesting to say the least. So I had to stop it. I had to reboot the printer a few times because it wasn't connecting to the computer. Go figure. Again, this is an old printer. And once I got that situated, once I made sure it started printing, I moved it to 1.8 a lot more sooner than I normally would. And since then, it seems to be printing completely fine. It's not going to be, well, it probably should be about as pristine as the first one, but the first few layers had a few little imperfections, but then it doesn't really matter as long as the thing continues printing. It doesn't get jammed. I'll make do with how it comes out. As long as it doesn't get stuck, I think we're going to be good to go. All right, the other half printed out relatively fine. So next step for me to do is to remove all the support pieces and then theoretically, or hopefully, glue both sides together. All right, hopefully since I've now figured out the printer and I generally understand how it works, the rest of the model parts will, or most of the Cappie parts will go by relatively quick. So I split the cap in half and it's going to take about 2 hours or so to print. So just like always, I'm going to, continue printing and come back when necessary. All right, so it decided to stop again. Luckily, before I went out to do things around town and whatnot, I told my father that this thing likes to sometimes stop. So if he sees the head just not doing anything, just go to the back and flip the power and it'll just turn itself off. Well, when I was out and about, it did that. My father called me, I told him what to do, and it just been sitting like this until I just got home. I'm currently in the process of heating everything up so I can remove the actual issue and whatnot. So I'm going to try and get it to do something with the computer here, but the computer is not wanting to do its job. So it looks like I need to do it through the old, apparently I need to do it through this. Not that, move. I believe it's this. Oh, it moved. Okay, whatever. Alright, so it stopped right there. It got a little bit done, but not a lot. So I'm gonna clean the thing up and I'm gonna go to bed, and then I'm gonna try this thing all over again. The second half piece for the hat came out completely fine. I didn't have to restart it or anything. So what I'm doing now is I'm printing out the first part of the upper portion of her body, and it's going to take 4 pieces in total. So this may take a little while, but I'm just again happy I'm even able to get into this state in the first place. That's actually printing semi-consistently. It is annoying that it likes to stop from time to time. I don't know why it does that, but I'm uh, not really going to do anything about it because this is an old printer. I'm just I'm just surprised it even works in this state in the first place. Surprisingly enough, the first part of her upper body printed out completely fine. It didn't stop once. It just did its job. So I'm very happy to see that. If I'm guessing everything is right, it will just print like no tomorrow. So with that said, I got a few more days to, well, this is still going to take at least another week or so to put together completely, and that's just because I'm just taking my time. And since this video has already gone on long enough, I'm just going to come back whenever necessary. Mainly if something goes wrong again, or print fully succeeds and stuff like that. And hopefully in the next maybe theoretically 3 or so minutes, we'll have a fully printed off Cappie. But to me, it's going to be again about like another week or so. Now, it may not take a week, but I'm going to give myself about a week or so because again, I'm having to muck with again a very old printer. Alright, it is the next day. I'm starting the next side of the shirt. I also scratched my cornea, so yay. At least that hasn't stopped me from being able to use my 3D printer since it's not that bad. But with that said, apparently I got 3.5 hours to go, and it's going just fine, so I'll come back when it's done, or if it stops, or again, whatever goes wrong. Hopefully nothing does, but again, this is an old printer. The other side came off relatively fine. I only had to do one print. So the next step is the 2 arms, and then probably after that, the legs. Alright, both arm sections printed out completely fine. So next are the legs. I'm going to start off with the thigh, and then I'm going to print off the feet area and whatnot. Basically, I split the leg in half. I'm doing a lot of splitting. I would like to have it to where these can combine and whatnot with like actual proper little keys and whatnot. But due to the limited, I guess, resolution that this printer can print at, I just got to print at faces like this. But considering how big these faces are, I shouldn't really have any real issues with adhesion and whatnot, especially considering the super glue I'm using is actually relatively strong. Alright, the first part of one of the legs is done. It came out relatively fine. And to make sure I know which one goes to which as I'm gluing together, I have a little itch mark right there, and I'll do a double on the other one. That way so I know which part goes to what leg and whatnot. So with that said, I'm actually going to be going to bed because again, I scratched my cornea, so I didn't really get that much sleep last night. So I'm going to theoretically be able to finish off both legs tomorrow. And then once that's done, then the next step is the hands, and the face. So maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 more days total of printing, and then I'll be able to glue this thing together. So I'll come back when I guess get the other half of this leg printed tomorrow at some point. Well, it decided to stop again, so yay me. So gonna do another reprint. And what makes it even more annoying is that this one was like 82, or not 82, this one was 92% complete. It was almost done and then it just stopped. So again, I have no idea why it does this. It's annoying, but I'm not putting much of a fuss because it's such an old printer. It's a miracle I'm even able to get it to do what I'm currently doing in the first place. All right, second time around, it came out relatively fine-ish. It definitely has some issues right here and whatnot. It does look ugly, but again, it doesn't matter from right now. I'm just happy I even have it in this state. Now what do I do to get this to happen? I bumped the speed up to 1.8. I was trying to see if I can stop it from failing, and it looks like it tried to fail at the exact same point as previously. So me proudly speeding up the way I did actually stopped it from failing. So it made it to go all the way. So again, I don't really care. Yes, it is annoying and whatnot, and well, I kind of do care. But in the grand scheme of things, I already have a near perfect Cappie print for my A1. And like I said before, I'm just seeing if I can even get this done in the first place. At some point down the road, will I probably maybe figure out how to get more consistent, more cleaner prints? Yes. But today ain't that day. Well, it decided it didn't want to get stuck again. Yay. So, reprint again. One thing I'm trying to do to combat the sticking issue is just occasionally moving in the part somewhere differently in the bed. I don't know why it stops. I just know it happens, and sometimes if I just move it to a different part on the plate, it generally seems to work. But then again, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why this printer stops. Like I said, it's annoying, but there really isn't anything I can do about it because, again, this is such an old printer. It's a miracle I even have this. All right, got the other leg to print properly, so now I need to build the other part of it. So yeah, hopefully it won't fail, but if it does, it only takes like an hour or so to print. This is like 3 to 4, so when this one fails, it sucks more than just the other part. So I'll come back when it succeeds or if it fails. Alright, the foot also finished off without any issues. I'm guessing there's something weird about like the middle of the bed to where if it prints for too long it just stops. I don't know why, but either way, I now have I had the last foot model, so the next step for me to do is to print off the hands and then print off her face. So I'm going to start the hands next because I'm gonna get that done and over with because the face I'm going to probably print out of the Sunlu silk filament because I actually prefer the Sunlu face over the standard gray. So I'll get all this situated off camera and come back. All right, both hands came off relatively fine. You can see these little puck marks right there. The strands actually broke. But other than that, the hands themselves came out relatively fine. Alright, I'm printing off the face. I'm using the Sunlu filament like I mentioned. One thing I found pretty interesting is I had a little bit of a tangle on the spool, so I paused the print. I did a cut to the filament. Then I re-spooled the spool to get rid of that filament jam or whatever it was called. My brain's not working right now, sorry. I fixed the issue and I hit resume after getting everything refed, and it's been printing relatively fine ever since. I might be able to find the line of where I actually paused it, but since it was at the near beginning of the print, it's probably more or less going to be hidden. But so far it is printing relatively fine, and I am coming out every so often to make sure I don't have any more filament jams and whatnot. And also what I'm doing is I'm just doing this to try and reduce some of the load on the filament and whatnot, because this bolt is getting a little low and I am noticing a few areas where the filament might be entwined and whatnot. But it is, again, printing off as it should, luckily. Well, looks like I'll be finding the printer for a little bit. The print failed again. This time it failed right there. So at the very least, I can see what it'll be like to remove the supports from the head, because since I'm not able to use tree supports, this one's going to be a little more interesting. This just uses the old-fashioned support type. I can't use trees on this printer, but it doesn't seem to really like them. It just doesn't have all those unique new features that can properly, more or less, make the trees easily kind of just pop off. So with that said, I'm going to now figure out exactly how to pull these off and see what it looks like. Alright, so some whittling down and whatnot. It came off relatively fine. So I didn't put too much effort into this because, again, it's a fail. But I wanted to see what it'll come off like and, of course, see how the hat fit. It fits fine, and if I get a proper full print of the face, I'll put a little more effort into making sure it's all nice and flat. But for a preliminary test, This is more than enough. Would I have liked for it to fully succeed in the print? Yes, obviously, but what you're gonna do, like I keep saying, it's a 10-year-old printer. It's a miracle I'm even able to get it in the print that I have right now in the first place. I did a reprint of the head. It does look a little bit more cleaner. It does have some issues still, so my theory was right about it being the film and whatnot. So I'm just going to use this one in the end because it just looks a lot more cleaner and it's a little bit more stronger. So now I gotta spend the next maybe what 30 odd minutes removing the form so I can or the supports that way so I can actually kind of attach the head and make it look halfway decent. So with that said, I will come back a little later on when I'm actually more awake because I'm still just getting up and I don't really feel like messing with this thing right now. Finally at the home stretch, I got everything printed off, got the face situated, got the ponytail printed. Good grief, sorry about me not being able to speak properly. But all the parts are now printed. Everything's more or less cleaned up to the best of my abilities. Again, this is an old printer. It's a miracle I even have this in the first place. So the next step for me to do is to spend the next maybe day or so super gluing everything together. Reason why I say that is because once I get everything super glued and kind of in a place where they're going to hold together, I'm not going to be touching it for at least 24 hours because I've learned that you just need to let the super glue sit for a bit. So with that said, I will come back a little later to glue everything up and then let them sit. But for now, I want to play a little bit of Pain and Misery, known as Sea of Thieves. Alright, still playing some Sea of Pain and Misery. I have a bunch of supplies on my boat, so I really don't want to just go and leave because if you play this game, you'll know what I'm talking about. But for those that don't, getting supplies in this game, it can sometimes take a while. And I got a good amount of supplies that I really don't want to lose. So I'm just going to be working on Cappie as I'm monitoring my boat, making sure I don't run into people and the boat don't run into stuff. So I'll come back when necessary. There's a super glue right there, or a band ball, two Cappie heads, and of course everything else. So I'll just come back whenever necessary, I guess. All right, first piece glued up. It's still not cured yet. And of course, when I was putting this together, the game just had to spawn in a skelly boat, so I had to deal with that. So I had to make sure I wasn't knocking this over, and I had to make sure or muck around with these in the way because they're getting in the way of my cable. My movement from my mouse is significantly hindered. But this part is more or less together, so now I just need to put it somewhere and let it fully cure, and I'll do the same for everything else. All right, got the upper body more or less figured out. It's not the best again. I mean, like I said, it's a miracle I even have this in the first place. So I got the upper body kind of drying. It's actually technically more or less dry, but I need to reattach it to the lower section. But the lower section also needs to properly cure. So this is technically like the only part that's actually kind of more or less ready to go. I got the head right here. As you can see, I took some of the Sharpie and Sharpied it in her hair. And when it comes to the ponytail, it is split in half. And of course, I'm just resting it like this. That way, so the ponytail doesn't go anywhere and whatnot. It's more or less just curing at this point. So technically, I can just leave it alone. But I do want to rest just a little bit on something, giving it just a little bit of force so it doesn't just fall off. That's something I did with big Cappy also, so just doing what I'm doing with the big one, but the small one. The one thing that I'm doing different is the placement of the bottom. I usually actually had it flipped 180 due to how it was originally printed on the A1, but since I had to split the legs in half like so, once I made sure the connections for here was nice and sturdy, I now have to have it sitting like this as it cures because this section here and this little section right there are a nasty little break point to where these little sections here is going to be far more sturdier than obviously these right here. And of course, due to the limitations of the printer, I really can't add any little keys or anything into the prints because it just makes it far more difficult to clean than it should. And yes, I know the angle doesn't look right, but I gotta make do with what I got. I did try to use rubber bands and whatnot, and maybe in a little bit of duct tape also. Duct tape did work and the rubber bands did work, but sometimes you just gotta do this and it works just fine. I just gotta leave it like this for at least, what, 12 hours or so. All right, it is now the next day. I got everything more or less glued together. And the little Cappie is now fully complete. It took a significant amount of time, but that is to be expected considering, again, this is a $20 printer, and on top of that, it's an ancient printer. Like I keep saying throughout this video, it's a miracle I managed to even get this Cappie done in the first place. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Me mucking with this printer trying to get it to work, and me finally succeeding with an actual print. So I do want to apologize for the length of the video though.